Hey, welcome to Con Carolina's Television. I am Brawner, and I am here with my co-host.
Nick, I'm here. So excited for our topic for this week. Near and dear to my heart is the LARP, which, if you don't know what that means, it's live action role play. It's basically like D&D, but you actually act it out. You go out and you play your character. You fight for real. You get involved in storylines. It's one part theater, one part gaming. It's a great time.
Yeah, so we titled this episode "Larpageddon," and and the reason I did that is we've had several episodes, well, actually two episodes that have dealt with LARP, and both of which have been the highest rated episodes, both for season one and for season two. So the LARP community comes out and they just blow it up. So LARPageddon it is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go LARP. So
Doing it.
yeah, I don't know a whole lot about this stuff. I don't have ears or horns or satyr legs or um, anything. I mean, I don't
Yet.
have anything, but I have a desire, and I'm a lifelong D&D player, and I would love to make that transition into live action, because hell, I'm badass, and I think I could do some damage with one leg.
Yeah.
I think I can. Just write me into the story. I can do some stuff.
Yeah, I have
So
faith in
we
you.
So the first topic that we're going to talk about today. What before we do that,
Hmm.
let's introduce our fine panel here. Starting with you, Courtney. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here.
Sure. So I'm Courtney. I currently play at the Vanguard LARP in obviously North Carolina. I have only been LARPing actually since February, so I'm kind of a bit of a baby, but I've jumped in full stream. I'm kind of obsessed. I've played D&D for a really long time, love costume making, and I used to be a makeup artist, so a lot of LARP lets me use some of the favorite hobbies I have. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And Katie, what about you?
I'm Katie. I've been LARPing. I started before the pandemic, but then, of course, the pandemic made everything stop. Got back into it October last year, so been going very consistently since then. And like Courtney, I was a costumer. I was a cosplayer before LARP. I enjoy makeup, and it's been really easy to transition from D&D to LARP, and also the cosplay definitely helps it.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you and welcome. All right, and the furry guy. I mean, I don't know if we recognize him. He's been on the show a few times, but he's got this giant beard now. He's like
Yeah.
Viking esque.
Mhm.
Um,
Let it grow out. It's winter.
yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true, and it's No Shave November.
That's
So,
right. That's right. Got to do it.
True.
but who are you and why are you here?
Well, I'm Seth. I've been LARPing for since about 2014, 2015. So at this point, about 7 years. My home game is Vanguard. In fact, it's the only game I've ever been to. But I'm currently on staff. I'm on the plot team for that one. I kind of have a reverse uh, from the other two. I got into costume design and prop making through LARPing. So I just really loved looking at what people were coming up with, and was like, hey, I want to do that too. So in fact, I'm here at the crafting table because I didn't realize what time it was. And 7 minutes before the show, Nick called me up and is like, oh, crap. So I'm hard at work on something for tomorrow's game.
Right. And we thought Nick was just phoning in the episode when he was
Yeah,
calling you.
Yeah, I would just be on my phone the whole
that's
time
it.
and
That's it.
pretend I'm not here.
All right. Well, speaking of Nick, Nick, tell us a little
Hey,
bit about yourself and why you are here.
sure. So I'm a longtime LARPer. I can't even count it, like almost a decade. I don't know. It's been a long, or maybe more than. It's been a very long time. I was a player for a little bit, but then I stepped up into storytelling pretty early on. I've been a storyteller at Vanguard for years and years and years, ever since the first season the game started. I love it to death. It's so much fun. Storytelling's a passion of mine, but like I also was an improv person, so like I did improv coaching and improv teaching and that kind of stuff. And it's kind of a fusion of those loves of mine, take some improv. I was also a longtime role player and gamer and overall just nerd, multi-hyphenate. So it's a fusion of a whole bunch of my hobbies into one thing, one big passion. And I love it to death. And I've also had the privilege of role playing with each and every one of these fine guests. They are awesome. They're fantastic players and storytellers. And I'm just blessed to have them at my game and in my life.
Aww.
Aw.
And he's not talking about me.
No, this guy's
Because
good too.
I'm a curse.
He's all right. We take him.
I'm a curse. Well, take just a moment to recognize the chat and say hi to the people in the chat. Hey, Mom. Hey, Calvino. And I don't know who Lou Baby is. I don't know if I know that person, but I'm sure I know him in some facet or another. But hi, welcome to the chat. I'm sure that chat will grow and swell as we continue, as it normally does with LARPing episodes. But the first thing we want to talk about is, I guess, aesthetics, right?
Yeah, aesthetics.
Costuming and that kind of stuff. So, first of all, LARPing has got to be a pretty expensive thing to do, and it is pretty daunting, and it's pretty intimidating to people that don't have a lot of money, because people like me, I mean, I'm on a fixed income, I'm retired. I don't have a lot of money to just throw out there on stuff other than Batman, but I'm interested. So how do we do this on a limited budget? How do you put together awesome kits on that type of budget? And we'll just kind of go around the horn and see what we got going on. Who wants to start budget wise? Courtney, why don't you give us an idea?
I can
Hot potato.
definitely start. I was trusted with adult money and made bad decisions. So I'm probably not the best person to ask, but I can definitely say, as someone who's done costuming for a long time, I think the really cool thing about LARP is that, depending on which LARP you're going to, you don't necessarily have to have some crazy intense kit. You can really start simple and just build up as you
Mm-hmm.
go. So, thrift stores, taking
Mm-hmm.
items you already have and repurposing them. I'm a huge nerd to learn a new skill. So, being able to just, alter your clothes a little bit with some sewing makes a really big difference. So I would say that to me, that's the best way to get started is taking pieces that you can get at a reasonable price, either clearance racks or thrift stores, and kind of going from there, and then saving up and maybe getting a piece or two that's really like special to you.
Right. And do you I mean, is it overall okay, back up a second. How many of you guys have sewing machines? Raise your hand. Okay, so you don't need a sewing machine. I guess that's my question, right? So you don't need to have. So you just probably need a friend that knows how to sew. So like, hey, can you do this for me?
It helps.
Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. I like that. Because I'm not going to buy a sewing machine because I can barely turn on my laptop.
I love mine. It's pretty.
It is
Ooh.
pretty. And it probably does like 7,000 different stitch patterns. And,
No, it's actually a pretty simple one. I just got the heavy duty one because I used a lot of like leathers and furs and stuff. So it has a heavier motor and everything in it, but it's got like 20 some odd or maybe 30 stitches. It's not like crazy computerized or anything like that, but it's a solid workhorse.
the workhorse, work machine.
Mhm.
All
Mine's the
right.
opposite.
Yeah, I had an old brother that was like more of an entry model, and it just was not cutting it with the thickness of the heavy materials I wanted to handle. So upgraded this guy. It's not that expensive, honestly.
Sweet. All right, Nick.
Well, before I move on to the next question, just to add to that, I know like cloth work, it's usually not that expensive. Like if you don't have a sewing machine, you can probably get
Yeah.
something like this for not too expensive. Like I didn't make this, I don't know how to sew, but crafting can really it can really help out a lot. If you have a craft like leatherworking, it's a lot cheaper to do yourself, and it's not that intensive to get into like riveting and that kind of stuff. And
Yep.
leather armor tends to sell, like people will craft with leather and sell it for a lot more than the materials. And I mean, it's their time, so that does matter. It does take time, but if you do know a couple crafts, you can drastically reduce the cost, and it makes it a
That's a
much
good
more
point.
affordable hobby.
Yeah.
You also can go to places like the scrap exchange for materials. I love the
Yeah.
scrap exchange if you're near
I
Durham.
love the scrap exchange.
Yeah, there's a place in Asheville called just Asheville. Oh God, what's it called? Like Asheville Fabric and Foam. They have offcuts of leather, foam, material, like all kinds of materials, cheap. Great joint.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can sometimes luck out and
Chicago's great.
thrift some things too.
Absolutely.
Honestly, most of my pieces that I've really aesthetically enjoyed, they've all come from thrift stores.
And
Nice.
a lot of LARPs, like if you're new to the LARP and you don't really have a whole lot of costuming, that sort of thing, most people let you like borrow a tunic or something like that. Like ask. Like people are pretty chill.
Sweet. So along that lines, what are some inexpensive things that you can do to improve your kit? Like, what are just some like accent pieces or some things that don't cost that much that will really add to and make your like new player kit pop?
Belts.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you
Good.
can find
That's
them
good.
pretty easily at thrift stores. I found
Mhm.
one that was really neat. It was old, so it broke, but I actually have the belt buckle to it, and I thought I've never seen anything like it, so I want to fix it again and try to make it the statement piece. But yeah, belts I think are
If
great.
if you have a few tools or know how to work with like EVA stuff like that, really great for making armor. You can get thinner stuff like this. Here's some 2mm. That's plastizote. Here's some 5mm. It's like the
They
heat.
are hazing you, Seth. They are hazing you in the chat right now.
What are they saying?
They're saying that you're putting on a QVC show.
Oh man.
But wait, there's more.
He's in the workshop.
But I was gonna.
It's awesome.
Well, I won't mention what I was gonna say.
No, it's awesome.
Do you
Oh,
do you want to show us? You know what? Prove them wrong, Seth. I know that it's a little spoilery, but do you want to show them the helmet you made?
If you're okay with spoilers,
I'm okay. I mean,
it's not
who
finished yet.
knows how
It's
many?
coming along, but this is all EVA. All EVA and this barge cement is really great stuff. You can get it in smaller like that. It's kind of an intense can, but yeah, it's got lights, it's got all kinds of stuff. If there's plenty of videos and tutorials online. I love watching like Evil Ted Smith and Punish Props with Bill Duran. They do all kinds of walkthroughs. They have free blueprints and templates and things. In fact, this is based on one of Bill Duran's templates. It's it's really cool to pick up new new hobbies. Like all the crafting stuff that I've ever really done has come from LARP, and I've really it's kind of added a new dimension to my life. And you don't really need a whole lot of equipment to do it. Like Dremel's nice, but beyond that, like an X-Acto knife and maybe like a larger like box cutter, some glue, you got it made.
I invested in something really weird. This is kind of off topic, but since I had to make digilegs, I was working with foam, and I never thought I would have to buy a turkey cutter.
Yes,
I have
yes,
one
that was
too.
really good. Yeah,
I have one now.
mine broke, so I got to get a new one. But yeah, no, that works amazing for upholstery foam.
The electric turkey cutter. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That
Another
thing
Yep.
saved me a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another
Yep.
really easy one for new players is scarves. Like you
Yeah.
can tie them around your waist, tie them around yourself as a shawl. They add a lot of color and different textures. So literally scrap fabric or scarves is a really easy, cheap one to add on.
Mm-hmm.
love that. I love that.
And layers.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't think your kit looks good, just add another layer. Keep going.
Yep.
Layers are great.
All right, so that kind of covers the gambit of the norm. But what about if you're taking it to the next level and you want to do like creatures and monsters and stuff that um, it's a little more attention to detail type of stuff. Where do you go for that kind of stuff?
I look over to my goat legs that are right beside me.
Yep.
For that, I had to staring at the wolf head. I had to get a lot of YouTube tutorials.
Yeah.
Someone else
Good
that
resource.
made goat legs
Yes.
for the previous Vanguard, they showed me how they did it. It was a lot of just trial and error, and I hope these work this weekend because God, I don't want to make these again.
No, that's the
But
big thing is just like trial and error. Like, try something out. If it doesn't work, try a little different and see what happens. But yeah, YouTube's great. There are some services like Skillshare. I've used that before. We have tons of really in-depth walkthroughs on how to do certain things. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
mean, I
so
think, yeah.
just to give us an idea, Katie, how long did it take you to fabricate the goat legs?
I've been working on them off and on since April of last year,
Wow,
or yeah, April. But I
that's
have
dedication.
ADHD, so they sat, and then it was summertime, and I was like, "Oh, it's 90 degrees. I don't need this right now." And now
Right.
it's going to be 28 degrees. So in
Yeah.
about a week, I have said, "You're gonna do this," and
Mhm.
now they're done. But once I just sat down and actually like looked at the tutorial, it was pretty easy. It was a lot of just I have to like they're leggings and then it's foam and then the fur on top. So I have to wear them and basically like sew them onto my body. So
Wow.
yeah, it was a lot of just getting the energy to do that, but it was actually kind of fun just seeing what worked and what didn't work. Um, yeah,
So
it was definitely a project.
okay, so there's an event tomorrow, right, for you guys?
Mhm.
Yep.
That's correct, right? So
Yep.
Mhm.
just really quickly, what's your character, Courtney?
My character is a tiefling named Lamia.
Well, I love tieflings.
Mhm.
Very cool. And Katie, are you the goat tomorrow? Are you doing
I
the satyr
am.
tomorrow?
I
Okay, so
am. I'm going to
cool.
be my satyr girl. I actually have two characters, but this month I'm going to be my satyr girl. She's a paladin, and her name is Cleo.
Paladin satyr. Love it. All right. And Nick, what are you going as?
So I'm actually on the storytelling team. So I shift, like I
Lots
do
of.
different roles throughout the course of the game. I come in, inhabit different characters to help tell stories and adventures, and like hook adventures to players, and then take them off or send them off and have them go do this, that, or the other thing. So I'm playing a variety of different things, but I'll be there. Ooh, this might get spoilery. I'll be there as a tiefling, um, a gnome, um, something that is necromantic, another something that is
Oh,
necromantic. And
oh.
Keep
Two.
going. Keep going.
let's see what else. Whew,
What
sort
are
of
your
hole can I dig
stats?
myself in tonight?
Yeah, don't give them an unfair advantage.
Yes, true.
The three of them. All right, cool. So we know that you have an intense, multi costume, multi storytelling aspect to your portion of the event. What about you, Seth? What are you gonna do?
Pretty much the same thing. I got several different characters I'll be playing. I have
Awesome.
a human. I've got a Battleforge automaton, so like a metal man.
Robotish,
Yeah, kind of like
Yeah.
like
Kind of
the
like
Tin Man.
Alphonse from Full Metal Alchemist. It's like
yeah,
that, like
like
Aha.
made of
person made
armor.
of
Yeah,
armor.
Ooh.
yep. That's a great comparison. Yeah. I have a soldier, like just a. I guess he's human. I don't know. Anyway, he's always been under stuff. Um, I think that's. I think I may only be playing. I think I have a Fae also that I'm playing this like a fairy.
Wow. So it sounds like almost like every you hit on almost every kind of character, kind of just weirdo thing you got going on, from fairies to goats or satyrs or
Yeah.
whatever.
Fairies to furries.
Fairies to furries
Yeah.
to
Yep.
paladins.
Yep. That's
So speaking of furry, let me see that helmet again, or let me see that wolf set again.
yeah.
Oh
This
yeah.
is my character from the first season or the first iteration. His name was Kadir. He was a Varn paladin. Um, but yep. Yeah.
And
For
you
those
made
at
that,
home
or you
who may
bought
not
that?
know,
No,
Varn are canine people.
yeah, I made it.
Wow.
A lot of trial and error there too. Like it's got it's a resin cast skull that I didn't make that part, but I did the furring to the jaws. There's a fan in there too, so I can get a little air. It's like
The
stuck up here in the snout.
cooling,
Yeah,
your little air conditioner.
yeah. I got some legs and some other things to go with it too. Uh, a little beat up just because it's several years old and been in lots of fights, but like at one point he took a nasty uppercut across the bottom jaw and broke these two teeth off.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yes, I had to. That was the first time I learned how to use milliput. So, yeah, just made myself some new teeth and glued them in.
Sweet. Well,
Very cool.
so that's the kind of the costuming and this aesthetic. Um, we had talked a little bit or mentioned at least the storytelling aspect of it. And why don't you expand on that a little bit, Nick? For since you are and Seth are really involved in the storytelling aspect of the whole game.
Sure. So typically, just like with any sort of role-playing game, with LARP, what you're going to do is you're going to get a rule book. Each
Mhm.
game has one, and when you read that, you'll read some stuff about the setting of the game. You'll learn about the world, and then you'll get to character creation. And just like with a tabletop role-playing game, you get to create a character based on a set list of fantasy races. If it's a fantasy game, or whatever fits the genre. If it's sci-fi, it might be aliens, whatever floats your boat. And in the process of creating a character, typically, like, what you'll do is you'll build the stats for the character, but more important, in my opinion, or equally important to some people's opinions, you also create a character's background. So you look at the
Mm-hmm.
lore of the game and you try to figure out a way, like, how does my character fit into that world? And that's where you go from there. So when we talk about storytelling, we're going to talk a little bit about just like storytelling in general at LARP, but also some focuses on characters and then role playing with each other. And I think for our first question, I really just kind of want to ask, like, to everybody, not me, other people in the chat, how do you create a compelling player character for a LARP? Like, what is your approach?
I can imagine that it's a lot like you said, character creation for any role playing game that you've come up with. Developing the backstory. That's the fun part for me is trying to create, because you develop such a wonderful connection to your character if you really start from the ground up and you give them the backstory and you give them relationships and you give them kind of a way to weave himself into the actual overall
Mhm.
journey. So
Yeah.
uh, at least that's my take just from a role playing standpoint.
Mhm. Yeah. I think making a really good compelling character it, like you said, does take figuring out how they fit into the world and the story as it's happening, as it's going along. But also I feel like a lot of people, it's like a temptation to fall into that main character syndrome, where they make this like really badass backstory and they come in at level one and they do and like
Right.
Yeah, so like a big thing for me on just coming up with a compelling characters. Have somebody interesting, sure, but don't overdo it. Like have somewhere for your character to go and grow. Your story happens here, not in the past. Like
Yes. Dude, I agree with you so much. I think that it's easy to fall into that trap, and often it happens, especially in the beginning. But
mhm,
the worst that you could do is write a character who's like their adventure is already done. Like
mhm.
you've the whole thing, they've done all their character growth, and then they show up, and okay, where does that character go? You've got to have somewhere like setting up a situation where your character has vulnerabilities or your character has some goal in mind, putting that down in paper
Mhm.
definitely helps. And then actually playing the experience will kind of drive like where your character ends up, as some people in this chat are very well aware.
Yep. So I guess I could go.
Yeah.
My character, she's a tiefling named Lamia, but I had a plan for her and it's gone completely out the way, and I'm really excited about it. But for
Yeah.
me, um, making a compelling character is something I nerd out over really hard because I'm a licensed counselor. So when I'm making a character, I'm thinking of it almost as like a behavioral case study. So I love making characters, which is also part of the reason why next season I am going to be on plot, and I'm very excited about that. So yeah, I think the big part is just being open. Like I swore up and down that my character was going to be a healer completely, and now she's a healer. Um, that's all I'll say. But she's gotten into some really cool things because of just being able to go with the flow and adapt to what's happening and really, react, because her story was left completely open. She had a little story in the background that I really enjoyed developing, but she came to this new place with a completely fresh slate, and she's just kind of wrecked it in a lot of ways. So, yeah, just create a cool backstory, but be ready for whatever.
Hold on to
And
your
don't make deals.
bootstraps, right?
Don't make deals with things you don't know about.
Yeah. And
Did you say don't or do?
Or do. Or
or
do. It's
or
much more fun.
always do.
Yeah.
Always.
And
I definitely agree with everything that everyone else is saying. For my alt character, I actually used my D&D character and
mhm.
just transferred her to LARP, and it worked really well. And I'm excited for what she is gonna get into. But then with my first character, I literally had zero backstory. She's got amnesia. She's just flying by the seat of her goat legs, and she
Sometimes that's the
she's just
best way to
here
do
for a
it.
good time, not a long time. And
Sometimes that's really fun.
I
Yeah.
love it because she's kind of an idiot, so I can just do whatever I want.
So is the amnesia thing kind of a cop out?
No, because there was actually a reasoning for
Okay,
it,
good.
but I just kind of want, like, I still gave her a slight background, but my thinking was, well, it's just a background. Right now, I don't really care about that. I just want to have fun in the present and towards the future. So I wanted her to just be able to not really be bothered with
Mhm.
anything from the past. And
Right?
that was the
Yeah.
easiest thing I could think of.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. That makes sense. Why torture yourself with the past when you want to live in the moment? Especially when Seth and Nick both said that's probably the best thing to do in the game is not really focus on that, but focus on the now, which is cool. I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I've seen a lot of people go in and like what you put down on paper versus what you actually do. Like what you actually do becomes your character.
Mhm.
And so like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with writing a backstory that's like 2 paragraphs and
Yeah.
just gets you started, and then going into playing your character, inhabiting that personality, and seeing where that character's story is going to go based on the things
Yep.
that you do. And you might
And
be surprised.
I know my first character that managed to survive the whole way through all of version 1 of Vanguard was very different from the way I conceived him originally to where he ended up even within a few months, like with a few events. So don't feel like you have to, like, if you come up with a backstory, if you come up with a personality that you want, and don't feel like you have to follow through with that for completely.
Right.
Like,
It can be fluid.
yeah, it should be fluid. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I agree. Yeah,
Awesome. So
change. Be
let
willing to adapt for what you're going to
Hmm.
enjoy.
Yep. And a good one thing that's really helped me a lot with a lot of different characters, just playing silly little icebreaker games like Never Have I Ever, or, like, just first thing comes to your mind. That's then that's now canon.
All right. Well, so like one of the questions is like about some folks being more outgoing. See, I'm an outgoing individual, so I don't think
It's
I would
fair.
have a problem going into a LARPing scenario and being able to project myself into the game, especially because I have a background in role playing. But how do you guys, as either storytellers or the players, get people that are a little reluctant, a little more subdued in their personality, to how do you bring them out of their shell a little bit and get them to participate a little more? Courtney, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so truthfully, I think like I'm actually an introvert. People don't think it.
Oh
I
wow.
am outgoing, but I am an introvert. So I think when I started LARP, I was actually pretty terrified and was like, I don't know how to do this in February. But I think part of it, like when you get in your kit, you do kind of start to
Hmm.
feel like that character. So if you create a character that's more outgoing,
Hmm.
as strange as that might seem, you do kind of embody that and become a lot more confident because my character and I don't have a ton in common, actually. Um, but I think that that's part of it. And then go with friends. Like definitely go with people that you know because if they have more experience than you, I came in with a group that had played LARP, had done LARP for a while. They kind of pulled me into things, and I think that when you're a more experienced player and you know there are newer players, do what you can to also pull them into the story because that will give them the opportunity to engage in a way that really works for them. So I think that's the kind of twofold way for me.
Yeah, and that's really important. I think, especially when you look at the feedback in the chat. A lot of them are saying that they would be in their head about it, having anxiety. Um, and you don't want to go to an event or a game like this and torture yourself.
Hmm.
You
Of
want to
course. Yeah.
you want to go to for the enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
It's really
So
fun, and you can get in
Hmm.
the moment, and
right
like once you do it, once you really get in that kit,
there
like
it
something
is.
just kind of changes. So if you're
There it
nervous
is.
about it, do it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I think it's like when you're playing like D&D or Pathfinder or whatever, you don't you're not you're here, right? You're immersing yourself, mentally. But then when you enter the realm of LARPing or whatnot, I think that everything around you, the environment, just has a tendency to lend itself to building you up and making you a little more, um, I don't know,
Hmm.
engaging.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's really cool.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, like like Courtney said, I really am more of an introvert naturally. I guess I'm an introvert that learned how to be an extrovert, or how to fake being an extrovert. Um, and a big part of that was LARPing. Like, I was very nervous my first few games. My kit was not where I wanted it because I, tried to do something really intense and just didn't know how, and like was kind of struggling with it, and it was a little discouraging at first. But I still went out and did it, and the kit got better. I got better at you know being more outgoing, and eventually, honestly, one of the big things that helped me, at least in the beginning, was having a character that wore a mask, and like, it felt very separate from myself, and I could, do things more differently from I could kind of separate myself from the character because it literally was behind a mask. So it
Hmm.
helped out.
I totally get that. Like what you were saying, and Courtney, you were saying this too. The idea that like you put on the costume and then you just kind of eventually like you get trained, almost like a like muscle reflex or whatever. Like you have that suit on, and then you're that character, and you start thinking like that character. It gets to the point where like and I know this guy switch characters all the time, but like I'll put on the kit and I won't be consciously thinking about like, oh, what am I going to do as this character? What am I going to say? I just put it on and then now I'm this, and I go out and play. It's crazy how that can be so transformative, and it like changes your whole mindset. It reorients you and gears you toward doing what you have to do as that character and experiencing the world the way that character would.
And I think I would imagine that it would come off a lot more natural too when that happens. It's almost like being in the zone, right? All right, well,
Kind
cool.
of just going off what everyone else said, yeah. The mask, I can absolutely see where that would help. I always try to wear a wig with my character just so I can kind of separate myself as well. With Cleo, when I brought her in the first day, I didn't really know what her personality was. I just knew like I wanted to be a satyr and I want to be extremely outgoing. And then the next moment I knew, I was screaming up at the sky trying to heal somebody. And that's just it built up from there. And now I'm just the screaming goat. That's
So
her character.
there's a question from the chat that says, "Have you ever?" This is from Sean, actually, Dorian. Have you ever forgotten which character you were playing during a scene or during whatever you called those things? Is it a scene or?
I feel like if you were an NPC and you were a lot of different people throughout the weekend, you could definitely be like, wait a minute, hold on, who am I right now? But because you're one character the entire weekend, it's pretty easy to remember. Like, oh,
Right.
I'm a paladin right now.
Right.
I struggled once when there was a game a little while back where I was playing a monster NPC, a spider queen, and until I put her legs on, I was like, oh, this is kind of a sassy little outfit. So obviously I'm still like in that mindset of my character because that was really similar. But once I put the legs on and everything, I was like, oh no, this is different. So for me, like having the costumes be different enough helps, but if they're too similar, I think that makes it difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I would absolutely love to see the blooper reel of that that kind of thing happening. It would be hilarious.
So having played a bunch of different characters in a single weekend, I can say I've never had an issue where like I lost track of what character I was and like started thinking like a different one. But I've had moments where like I was playing a character and I was supposed to be doing something and it was like super serious, and because of like something that someone else said, like I broke, and like and it happens. Like sometimes somebody will say something that's super funny while you're out there doing something serious and you just kind of laugh, but that's okay, it's actually really healthy for people to see that you're still like a person even in those really serious moments. The drama is great, and obviously you want to try to stay in play and inhabit your character as much as possible. But it's completely acceptable to like let a little bit of yourself show from time to time as well.
Yeah, I've mixed up accents before, but I don't think I've ever like mixed up characters. Just like started talking and like, oh wait,
counts.
That's the wrong one. So
that's funny. All right. So, what strategies do you use to share scenes with other participants? Let's start with Nick. Nick does a lot of the storytelling type aspect.
Oh boy. My goal, so especially with NPCing, is to always put the impetus on the players. It is not my role to solve the problem. I am there to introduce a problem and make sure that other people are aware of it. And I'll even like if I see that some people are more involved than others, sometimes I'll go to the people that don't seem as involved and try to like talk with them and get them involved. And like usually that helps. I also think like from a player standpoint, if you're a veteran, like find someone who is newer and reach out to them, make connections. It can be a little scary and a little intimidating at times to like go to a complete stranger, but in the LARP community, it's like really accepting, and that's like super normal. And then they won't be a stranger once you go up to them and talk with them and include them and bring them in. And it makes the player experience so much better and so much more enjoyable. When you know people, you see faces, they tell you stuff, and tell them about the world too, because that can be, you know, super intimidating. It's one thing to read
Mhm.
like the background lore and what it is, but then getting to game, like you're not going to remember every detail, and also like what's in that background text might not be pertinent with what's happening in the game world at that time, because these are progressive campaigns, right? So bring people in and tell them about the game and get them included in that regard. I think that helps so much.
Yeah.
All right. So what kinds of stories, or what are your favorite types of stories that would you like to tell in a LARP?
Um, that's that's hard. I mean, like, there's very few kind of stories I don't like to tell. I guess more
Yeah, we've
like
got two
yeah.
storytelling generalists in here. I know another guy on our team, Michael. He really likes horror, and that like he's chosen the
Yeah.
genre.
Yeah.
And he kind of goes forward with that. But I know Seth, you do a little bit of everything, right?
A little bit of everything. I guess if I had to choose like my favorite, I guess like adventure and like discovery type stories. But honestly, I'll do a little bit of anything.
All right. And do you guys switch? I mean, like periodically, do you do like steampunk? I mean, I hear there's different games or different types of games that require different characters other than like maybe high fantasy or
Mhm.
um, do you guys get involved in any of those?
So the game that we play is like a steampunk high fantasy
Yeah.
mix, so you can actually do
Oh,
either, and it's
Yeah.
completely acceptable.
Mhm.
But most of the times, like, excuse me, the game setting is sort of chosen from the beginning. Some games are high fantasy, that's what they do. Some games are sci-fi. Some games are like zombie apocalypse games, and you don't. It doesn't really change like per game. Like usually, what would happen is a new LARP would start, and that would be a different game if it was going to be a different setting.
gotcha.
If that makes
Mhm.
sense.
No,
Yep.
complete sense.
Yep.
All right, why don't we, since you're the expert, Nick, at this, and I really don't know anything about it, and this
Sure.
seems to be an intensive type of a situation. Um, um, it's like
Yeah,
the well-being of the participants is what we want to talk about. And
yeah,
since we have also Courtney here, who is, getting her doctorate in this type of scenario where we can talk about well-being and the health, the mental health of individuals and during a role play or a LARPing type of situation. Why don't we expand on that? I'm going to let you carry the torch on this one,
sure.
Nick.
Yeah. Obviously, like social emotional well-being are incredibly important when it comes to role play. You want people to feel comfortable. You want them to feel accepted. You want them to have fun. And like most LARP has conflict and confrontation in it. And conflict is great and wonderful, but also some people have certain things that inspire other emotions in them
Mm-hmm.
beyond the character. And it kind of bleeds into, as we call it, bleed into
Mhm.
like the person and the person's experience and traumas. So bleed is this phenomenon when the emotions from the character affect the player out of game. So like the player is feeling something based on what happened with their character in play. Um,
Mm.
it can happen when people are role playing in games like D&D, and it's more susceptible to happen in LARP, I would say, because you're actually like you're there living as the thing. You inhabit it.
Mhm.
Your character looks like you and whatever you're wearing. There's not as much of a layer of separation. For all of our LARPers, veteran, new LARPers, what advice do you have for how to prevent or deal with this bleed, right? If when you're feeling it.
I'm gonna jump right into this one because obviously I nerd out really hard about this stuff. um, I think the first thing you need to do is talk about it. So,
Mhm.
especially if there is a conflict between you and another character in play, like you need to check in with that player out of play once you've gotten out of your kit and you're no longer in that mindset to be like, hey, I know this thing happened. Let's talk about it. I'm finding myself feeling negative towards you and I feel like it's bleed. Like, you've got to talk about it because,
Hmm.
I think back to literally my first event. There was a character that we just did not get along in play. It was very sassy. And we ended up going to afters together, which is when you go out and eat lunch after the game is over. And I talked to this person. I'm like, oh, you're not a complete butt. Cool, great. So, like, I experienced bleed my first game, learned about it, and was like, okay, no, I get this. So I would say just like talk about it and be aware that it can happen.
Yep. And and to kind of extend on that, don't be afraid to check in with that person like in play, like while you're going, if things are getting particularly heated, like, if you think that it's a situation where bleed might be happening or they might be actually upset or something like that, it's not role play, it's getting a little too deep. Just stick your hand over your head, say, hey, I know it's getting intense. How are you doing? Like, and
Is
then
that like the pause button?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, at least in,
Oh,
in Vanguard, that's the sign for out of play. I think that's pretty
universal.
standard across LARPs. But at least the ones, I don't know. But either way, whatever your LARP says is the out of play sign. Like, you can take a second to check in with them, see how, if they think it's going too far, and like if they say it's going too far, then don't try to argue, don't try to justify, just say, okay, I'm sorry, we'll back
You
off.
also
Yeah.
can do a
To
nonverbal.
prevent. Oh, sorry. Go.
No, I was just gonna say you also can do a nonverbal check-in if you don't
Hmm.
want to like
Oh
stop
yeah,
the
it's like,
immersion. You can just kind of give a thumbs up, and then if they do a thumbs down, you know it needs to stop. That's something
hmm
else I really like about Vanguard.
yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna
definitely.
say the check-ins are really nice to be proactive about it because I know in a few intense scenes that I've had previously, like we will pause, be like, "Hey, is it okay if I do this?" Or, "Hey, we're
Hmm.
yelling. Are you cool? Should we stop? Do we need a break?"
Hmm.
And I'm one of those people
Hmm.
that's just like, "No, we're going at it right now. Let's keep going."
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I like it when emotions get really high, but I know a lot of people don't. So I use this a whole lot.
yeah. I know I've definitely been in situations where I thought somebody was like legitimately upset, like I thought they were really, in a bad way, and I just like, take a break and like, try to talk to them, and they're like, oh no, I'm having a blast, it's totally role play. I'm like, oh, hey, cool, sweet, let's go.
I can totally imagine that happening. Only from being a role playing aficionado. I have experienced it just in a D&D game where and or playing Magic the Gathering. I mean, there's people that rage quit all the time. There's people that that do have these emotions, and emotions are bound to happen, right?
Hmm.
But someone in the chat actually said costumes help a lot with preventing bleed. What does that
Okay,
mean?
Mhm.
when you take off your
It just kind of
costume.
separates you from your character, I would
Ah,
Hmm.
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
That makes a
Just
whole
so
lot of
like
sense.
Okay.
you are more clear and the other person's more clear, like, oh, I don't like I have negative feelings towards your character right now,
Hmm.
not
Yeah.
you as
Yes.
a actual person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I mean, I
the
could also
chat.
say, having recently played a like really bad necromantic lich guy last month, I put on this skull mask, right? And people were saying all sorts of terrible things to me, and I was saying terrible things back to them. But we knew, like I knew, no one's
And that's,
saying that
yep.
to me. They're not insulting me. I'm this terrible lich monster. Go
Yeah.
at
Right.
it, you know. Costumes definitely help with that and help make that separation a little more clear.
Hmm.
The chat just mentioned that LARPing has safe words. Good to know.
Yeah. Banana. Yeah.
That's humor. Kumquat. Oh wait, I'm not giving mine away.
There it goes.
There it is. All right, Nick. What else you got?
All right, I'll get the
Um,
duct tape.
So the other thing I kind of wanted to touch on, so like not really as much with like emotional concerns, but also on this idea of player well-being. LARP, it's physical. It can be a physically
Yeah.
demanding activity. There's a lot of fighting,
Hmm.
which is super fun. It's so much
Hmm.
fun to go beat on things with foam weapons and act out the things that you would normally like rolling to do as your character with tabletop.
Hmm.
But at the same time, as a LARP runner, I want people to come to my game, whether they can do the combat or whether they just want to do the role play. And that includes people with like physical disabilities, or people who are older who might have some long-term injuries that they're still dealing with. So I guess my question is, how can LARPs be more inclusive of people with physical disabilities? And we're going to start with Seth.
All right. I think a big part of that, like, you can't always control your site. You can't always control like the physical setup. I mean, you can do what you can to make accommodations, but a big thing I think is just beyond having like physical setup for it, having opportunities to involve players in the story that don't rely on combat, that don't, for people that either have difficulties with that or just like you said, don't want to do it. And like, not wanting to be a combat character is totally valid. Like, you don't have to be a fighter to be a LARPer. So having storylines, having things to do in town that uh, allow those other roles, those other experiences, not only gives more inclusion, but also widens the world. It makes it feel more lived in. Because not everybody's a knight,
Right, right. There's got to be a peasant somewhere.
Or
I'd be a good peasant.
traders,
A crafter.
crafters.
I'd like to be a butcher.
You could also in our game we have we allow Nerf guns. Like you have to paint them up to make them look like they're immersive, like coppers and stuff to make them look all steampunky. But for somebody who's like, let's say somebody is in a wheelchair, like they could totally just pull out a Nerf gun and shoot something from a distance.
Yep.
Would I have to pimp out my wheelchair though? Is my question.
No, not necessarily.
Would I have to make my
we're not gonna
wheelchair
make you do that,
steampunky?
but you should do that.
I know, right?
That would look super cool.
Steampunk wheelchair. But would it would need to be like 4x4 because you guys are in rough terrain too, right? You're not like on a road.
No, it's not certainly not as bad as the last place we were. Up in Ginger Cascades, yeah.
No matter what, it felt like you were always going uphill. This one is much more even. Like everything is flat.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, climb a mountain and 60 pounds of kit. That's fun. Yay, steel armor.
Memories.
just so that I mean, I know it's kind of like a little bit of a right turn here. Real quick, how do you guys determine where you play? I mean, like you say, you had like your last location and a new location. The difference. What's the determining factor and all that stuff?
Sure. So I can go, having recently chosen, or within a year chosen a new site. You look for, well, first off, you have to find an encampment that has enough like beds, rooms, housing, and normally you're looking at camps. Girl Scout camps, Boy Scout camps will have the accommodations that you need to make sure that you can house your players. And then beyond that, you want a place that has enough open terrain and open area for when you have to do combat and field battles and all that kind of stuff. Our current site, like, we kind of lucked out in that it was kind of a LARPer's paradise because like the main place where the players stay is an actual built up wooden fort with like walls on the front, and you can actually go up the stairs and like get up to the top, and there's guard posts. So that's really cool.
Oh, wow, cool.
We also have a built up wooden pirate ship that's like off the side of a lake, so you can go on there and actually do mods on the ship, which is awesome. We have a mine too. Like there's a mine that you can go in, and it's really cool. Lots of tunnels. So that kind of stuff. Like going to a site and looking at and thinking about like the stories you can tell there really helps pick one.
Which lends to the world building and immersiveness of it all. I love it. It gave me a little bit of like heebie-jeebies or chills or whatever.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff you can do too. Like if you don't have those things, which most places don't. There's a lot of things you can do to upcycle things like thrift store finds and stuff. Make different set pieces out of like foam core and stuff even. So, and then there's also just like LARP is a creature of the imagination. So just like, be willing to imagine what you see rather than having to actually see it.
Creature of the imagination. Okay, we're running up on our end time here, but I really quick want to go around the horn and ask, what should a person look for in a LARP when choosing one to attend? Let's start with you, Katie.
I guess really you gotta just see what best fits your needs. Where I live, there's not a lot going on, but their Vanguard is about 4 hours away, and that's not a bad drive for me personally. So really, it just depends on like how far are you willing to travel. Are you going to travel with family? Vanguard is family friendly, so we have kids that also LARP. Um, do you want to tent?
Yep.
Is there spaces to tent? Do you not want to tent? It's just a lot of personal preferences when it comes to that, because there's another LARP that I'm thinking about going to during the summer. It's only like a once a year LARP, but it's like, well, there's no cabins. You have to tent. It's a longer drive, so I have to think like, okay, are these things that I want to do or should I not? So it's just a lot of personal preference, I think.
All right, Courtney, do you have anything to add to that?
I think for me, I live for the aesthetics, so I look for the flavor. Like, is it something that I want to make an intense costume for? If the
Mm-hmm.
answer is yes, that definitely helps. And then for me, it's also, do I know anybody there? That's really what helps me make that decision. And I've been really lucky because I've made so many new friends at Vanguard. It's actually one of my favorite things about it. Like, I love all these people, and it's great. And it makes an introvert want to be an extrovert. But I think for me, it was really like, does it fit the flavor? Is it feasible for me to go drive wise? Because it's about an hour and a half for me, 2 hours. And then, the flavor and the people.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, that actually brings us to the end of the show. But it seems to me like it's a little bit unresolved. I think we need to have another LARPing episode. I
I
mean,
think so too.
the thing is that Con Carolinas, we're embracing the LARPing community on a whole new level. We've brought them onto our executive board. We want to increase the presence, the pageantry, the gorgeous. I mean, there's just gorgeous costuming out there. That's just next level stuff. And so Con Carolinas wants to incorporate all of that into 2023. And we've expanded hotels and we have lots of cool things in store. Um, and Nick is feverishly, planning stuff out
I'm so
on that
excited.
side of things. I just want to take the time and effort to thank each and every one of you guys for being on. Seth, as always, your input is amazing, and you've got a really cool little shop there, and you make a lot of noise, but you're worth it, buddy. You're really worth it.
Yeah, let's come over.
And, what did you bring in this? So he brought his belt and disc sander to show. Show and tell. Next time. Next time we'll play show and tell. But Katie and Courtney, first time on the show, you guys did an amazing job, and we thank you for your input. And we would love to have you back again,
Yes,
wholeheartedly.
definitely.
And Nick, I'll give you the last words, and then we'll rate over to, and I'll find out who we're rating over to. But
Sure.
take it away, Nick.
I'll make it simple. LARP, it's wonderful. If you've been thinking about doing it, come out, do it. Absolutely. Vanguard LARP, we're based close to Elizabethtown. It's toward the east side of the state. Google us. Type in Vanguard NC LARP, you'll find us. It's super fun. We've been doing stuff with Con Carolinas. It's been fantastic. I'm excited. This Con Carolinas, we're going to bring the LARP experience to you. So yeah, you should definitely come to Con Carolina's 2023 too. It'll be amazing.
Right. Go get your tickets now, concarolinas.org, and get your weekend badges. And Brawner down over, so stay where you're at. We're gonna head over to Great Big Bear and have a great night. And we love you. So peace, love, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.